Hello and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. The U.S. House of Representatives is expected to vote today on a bill to end the 6-week government shutdown. This comes as U.S. President Donald Trump declared victory, praising Republican leaders, while Democrats remain divided over a new deal to reopen federal operations. The U.S. Supreme Court has extended a pause on a judge's order that required U.S. President Donald Trump's administration to fully fund food aid for 42 million low-income Americans amid the federal government shutdown. Canadian Foreign Minister Additonally meets with counterpart from India, France and Mexico as G7 foreign ministers gather. Talks focus on Ukraine as the group of industrialized democracies seek a path to end the Russia-Ukraine war. French President Emmanuel Macron and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas announced a joint committee to draft a new Palestinian constitution. They say reforms are crucial for a democratic sovereign state and stress peaceful coexistence alongside Israel. Australia and Indonesia signed a new security treaty committing to consult each other if either nation faces threats. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto emphasized joint action, close defense cooperation, and regular dialogue. Turkey's defense ministry has said that 20 soldiers were killed in the crash of a military aircraft in Georgia as inspectors continue to search for clues on what caused the NATO members' cargo plane to go down. Now we start with U.S. The U.S. Supreme Court has extended a pause on a judge's order that required President Donald Trump's administration to fully fund food aid for 42 million low-income Americans amid the federal government shutdown. The court's action allows the administration for now to continue withholding about $4 billion from the supplemental nutrition assistance program known as SNAP or food stamps. SNAP benefits lapsed at the start of the month for the first time in the program's 60-year history. Recipients have turned to already strained food pantries and made sacrifices like foregoing medications to stretch tight budgets. The U.S. Senate has now approved compromise legislation that would end the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, breaking a weeks-long stalemate that has disrupted food benefits for millions, left hundreds and thousands of federal workers without pay and snarled air traffic. The U.S. Supreme Court has extended a pause on judge's order that required President Donald Trump's administration to fully fund food aid for 42 million low-income Americans amid the government shutdown. The court's action allows the administration for now to continue withholding about $4 billion from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program known as SNAP or food stamps. SNAP benefits lapsed at the start of the month or for the first time in the program's 60-year history. Recipients have turned to already strained food pantries and made sacrifices. Now for this discussion, we welcome former Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar. He's a former Indian diplomat, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now looking at this, what political consequences and also consequences are for the people in U.S. living in the SNAP benefits or depending on these SNAP benefits have for lawmakers and the Trump administration ahead of upcoming elections?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the show. You know, many of the actions that have been taken by President Trump and his administration go against the interests of ordinary people, particularly those who are not very well-to-do, who are underprivileged, whether in terms of their housing or in terms of meeting their basic needs or health care. So whether it is Medicare, Medicaid, or it is in terms of the food stamps, many of the facilities that were already available to them, which the previous administrations had made available for them, they have been taken away. And that, of course, has a huge impact on the standard of living of the people and their survival and their well-being. And so, in terms of what the judiciary has done, and this is not the first case, there have been other cases also, and we will of course see the future of what Mr. Trump has imposed as far as tariffs are concerned on different countries. So I think that is also under consideration in the Supreme Court. We have seen that some of the other courts have ruled against it in the past also. This authority, this capacity of the federal government has been challenged, and the courts have upheld that the presidents don't have that authority. So here also, this is a pushback against many of the actions that the Trump administration is doing. So I think they will have to take cognizance of this, and they will have to weave it into their actions, into the playbook as it goes forward, whether it is the administration, Trump administration, whether it is the establishment, or it is some of the other lawmakers who are involved in taking forward such initiatives. It will be a reality check for them. It will be a pushback as far as they are concerned.
Right. And also, Ambassador, what do you think would be the long-term effects or, effects on this government's voting? You know, as we know that there's another election coming up, but we know there's a lot of families, as you've mentioned in your answer, that there's so many people who are affected by these things, or who were affected in not only by SNAP, but by other things as well, like airplanes disruptions.
Yeah, that of course, that is a direct impact of the shutdown as far as the government is concerned, and that also, as the reasons are very clear. The Democrats have brought it out very clearly that it is because of the help to the impoverished in terms of the medical aid that is provided, that has always been provided to them, and that the Trump government is not willing to extend, is not willing to take forward. And so they are suffering. As far as impact on the elections, I think that is a very important point that you have raised. That's a very important question that you have raised. We have seen that in the recent elections, of course, the election of Zoran Mamdani, that has been very much in the news, not only in the United States, but also the world over. But there have been other elections also, and many of them have been won by Democrats. And we have seen that, a certain new type of playbook has been put into practice by Zoran Mamdani, that is the extreme left. Of course, Mr. Trump calls him a communist, the others call him radical left. He calls himself Democrat Socialist, Socialist Democrat. So we'll really have to wait and see whether he can provide some sort of energy to the Democrats. But we have seen in these elections also that the Democrats have done exceedingly well. Some people might argue that these have basically been Democratic positions, whether it is in Virginia, New Jersey, etc. But there are many Republican positions that have also been turned by the Democrats. And the reason is that many of the policies that Mr. Trump has used, I mentioned about tariffs earlier, And one of the results of the tariffs is that prices are going up, inflation is going up, and also this pushback against immigrants. And we have to realize that America is a country of immigrants. New York, particularly, is a city of immigrants. So that has had a negative impact on the Republicans as far as the elections are concerned. But the big elections now to watch out for, as you have alluded to, are the midterm elections that take place next year in November. So they will be watched very carefully. Of course, we need to keep in mind that in the midterm elections, it is the party which is in power in the White House that always tends to lose because of a variety of reasons which I don't want to go into at the moment. But I think here it is in the case of Mr. Trump, those reasons, in my view, would have been further compounded. So I think we'll really have to wait and see and analyze carefully as to what the results of those elections are. But I think it should definitely, they are not likely to be a source of happiness or encouragement to the MAGA crowd or to Mr. Trump himself.
Right. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Europe, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the situation in Pokrovsk remains difficult. With bad weather favoring Russian attacks, he warns that Moscow is increasing assaults in the southeastern Zaporizhia region. Ukrainian forces face heavy pressure as around 150,000 Russian troops advance towards Pokrovsk. Zelensky says Ukrainian forces continue to fight, targeting Russian positions despite the challenging conditions. Meanwhile, Ukrainian commander Oleksandr Syrsky reports that Russia has taken 256 buildings around Pokrovsk and is attempting a pincer movement to encircle the city. Kyiv denies that Russia fully controls the area and says supply lines to neighboring Mironod remain open. On the other hand, Russia claims full control of eastern Kupiansk in Kharkiv region and captured an oil depot and several train stops. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar. He's a former Indian diplomat, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us again. Ambassador, now looking at this, different reports coming in from Russia and Ukraine, we always see as foreign journalists are not reporting on this. It's only particular to Russian journalists reporting Russian advancements and Ukraine reporting Ukrainian advancements. So how could these reports of conflicting control claims between Ukraine and Russia, how do you think it is influencing global perception and media narratives of the conflict? Do you think there's information warfare that's also used in these?
No, absolutely. You're very right. I think it is, what in the military parlance it is called gray zone warfare, and otherwise we call it information warfare or warfare of perceptions. In terms of each side tries to tell its own story in a very positive manner. And we know that whenever wars take place, whenever conflicts take place, and particularly as far as the extended conflict that we have in Ukraine, then the first casualty there is the truth, is the reality, is the facts as to where do they lie. But I think that having been said, it is quite clear, number one, that today Russia does have an advantage as it goes into Ukraine, continues to occupy. Of course, its progress is very, very slow. It is very time consuming. With such a big country, such a big defense industry, such a big military industrial complex, such a big structure, defense structure. Over the last more than 3.5 years, we've, coming to close of 4 years, and it has really not been able to make all that much of progress. It is still able to occupy only about 18-20% of Ukraine. And I don't agree with those who say that Russia has not used its full might. I think it's on the contrary that the Ukrainians have really been fighting with their hands tied back behind the walls because they have got only defensive weaponry from the West. They have not really got, what they have been asking for, whether it is air power or Tomahawk missiles, which can really cause some pain and damage as far as Russia is concerned. So I think they have really always been, Ukraine has always been on the back foot. But in this case, I think it is reasonably clear that it is Russia which has the advantage, and although it might be making slow progress, but it is making progress. The other aspect I think we need to remember also is that definitely Ukraine, with the support from the West, but also through its own defense manufacturing of drones, it has been able to inflict significant damage and significant harm on Russian, particularly energy sources, whether it is refineries or it is pipelines. So I think it is, there are some figures to suggest that more than 40% of the energy of Russia has been impacted, has been damaged as a result. Of course, it might not be fully 40%, but and they would have been able to repair many of much of the damage that has been
Yes.
inflicted on that. But still, there has been damage. But to bring this to an end, this
Yes.
is definitely Russia is in the uh, advantageous position, is in a strong position.
But
But it would be to the benefit and advantage of both these countries if the war were to stop, if there would be a ceasefire, because both of them, both the countries, are suffering as a result of the continuation of the war.
yes, indeed. With that, I would like to thank Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar for sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we stay on this topic. Ukrainian Prime Minister has announced that Ukraine's government suspends Justice Minister German Galushenko amid an ongoing corruption probe in the energy sector. Galushenko, who previously served as energy minister, faces investigative actions, the ministry has confirmed. Deputy Minister of Justice for European Integration, Lyudmila Suhak, assumes the minister's duties during the suspensions. Galushenko describes the move as a civilized and correct scenario and vows to defend himself legally, emphasizing he will cooperate fully and prove his position. Authorities have not clarified whether these actions are directly linked to the National Anti-Corruption Bureau's energy corruption investigation, but sources indicate a possible connection. The probe targeted alleged irregularities and potential misuse of power within Ukraine's energy industry. Nabu has released a recorded conversation reportedly capturing Galushenko speaking with suspects involved in the case. Adding weight to the ongoing investigation, officials emphasized that the suspension is a precautionary measure to ensure transparency and prevent interference in the inquiry. The move marks a significant shakeup in Kyiv's government as President Zelensky's administration continues its crackdown on corruption. Now we move on to Pacific. Australia and Indonesia have announced a new security treaty, pledging to consult one another if either country is threatened. The announcement came in Sydney, where Prime Minister Anthony Albanese hosted Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto during a visit to Australian naval base. Albanese has called it a major extension of past agreements, committing both nations to regular security dialogue and closer defense cooperation. President Prabowo said the treaty reflects both countries' determination to safeguard peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific while maintaining Indonesia's non-aligned foreign policy. Let's listen into what both leaders have said.
This treaty will commit Australia and Indonesia to consult at a leader and ministerial level on a regular basis on matters of security, to identify and undertake mutually beneficial security activities, and if either or both countries' security is threatened, to consult and consider what measures may be taken, either individually or jointly, to deal with those threats.
We, I think, concluded an important agreement, an important treaty between Australia and Indonesia, committing ourselves to close cooperation in the defense and security fields. And I believe in the good neighbor policy. Good neighbors are essential. Good neighbors will help each other in times of difficulties.
Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong has said the treaty modelled on a 1995 agreement is expected to be signed next year, marking another step in Canberra's push to strengthen regional security ties. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for joining us again. Now, looking at this, how might the new Australia-Indonesia Security Treaty shift the balance of power between in Indo-Pacific region, and how will it affect the Indonesia and Australia's relationship moving forward?
It's a very important milestone because Australia taking charge the security of the South Pacific. They are the regional great power. At the same time, Indonesia has the potential to be a very influential great power in the Southeast Asia. So two countries agree the defense cooperation agreement is a very important milestone. Indeed, this is very important because two countries faced some crisis in the past. For example, the East Timor crisis, or the other ones, bombing in the Bali. This terrorism killed many Australians. So that's why at that time the two countries faced a crisis and the relation has a little bit deteriorated. That's why this is a process to recovering. The final reach this agreement is a very important milestone. But at the same time, indeed, the interests of the two countries are a little bit different. In case of the Australia concerned about China's expansion to South Pacific, and so Australia tried to deal with. Indonesia also concerns China's expansion, but at the same time, Indonesia is a little bit non-alignment stance. So Australia is a US ally and cooperate with other Quad member or AUKUS members. These are the framework against China. But Indonesia's stance, Indonesia want to be a little bit non-alignment stance. They want to be independent. So that's why a little bit different, even if they agree. But the interesting thing is, because of the non-alignment policy, Indonesia hasn't agreed to any bilateral security agreement in the past. So this is the first time. So that's why this is a game-changing, important agreement. Even if Indonesia do not have the will to be allied with the US-side countries, but at the same time, Indonesia try to show their influence to the other region by signed agreement with other country, and as a responsible great power, they try to show their influence. That is very good thing, I think. So that's why this is important milestone. Thank you.
Do you think that this could have any implications towards Australia and Indonesia's individual or separate relationship with China and the United States?
Indeed, because Indonesia, there are many choke points. China is crossing this choke point to enter the Indian Ocean. For example, the Chinese submarine, Chinese naval ship going to the Indian Ocean through the choke point of the Indonesia and Australia. This year, the Chinese naval ships fleet came to the coast of the Australia and surrounding the Australia. the course of their running is surrounding Australia. So that's why China has the will to expand their naval presence in this region. In this case, if Australia and Indonesia agree, of course, anytime they can check the choke point, anytime choke the choke points, that could happen. So that's why this agreement is a very important milestone who take charge in this region. So even if China expand the influence, of course, the regional country, they take their responsibility with the connection between Pacific side and the Indian Ocean side. So that's why, indeed, they are, both of them, both of the Indonesia, both of the Australia, both are very important country to decide the fate of this connection. So that's why this is indeed very important.
Right. Thank you for emphasizing that, Dr. Satoru Nagao. Always pleasure learning from you. Thank you very much. Now we move on to China. In Beijing, China's President Xi Jinping has met with Spain's King Felipe, marking the first state visit by Spanish monarch to China in 18 years. Xi has emphasized China's desire to deepen ties with Spain, seeking to boost both nations' global influence. Spain has been actively strengthening its economic and diplomatic ties with China, despite tensions between the EU and Beijing over tariffs, particularly in the electric vehicle sector. Madrid, led by Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, has worked to position itself as a key investment hub, especially in industries like green tech and automobiles. Spain is also China's top supplier of pork, but retaliatory tariffs have put the trade under strain. Amid these challenges, King Felipe's subtle diplomacy continues to foster trust and cooperation between these two nations. Now we move on to our next news. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he has an obligation to sue the BBC over the way of section of his speech that was edited in a Panorama documentary. Speaking to the media, he has said that his 6th January 2021 speech had been butchered in the way it was presented, had defrauded viewers. It is the first time Trump has spoken publicly about the matter since his lawyers wrote to the BBC and said that he would sue for $1 billion in damages unless the corporation issues a retraction, apologies, and compensates him. Let's in fact listen into what President Trump has said.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. You know, why not? Because they defrauded the public, and they've admitted it, and their top echelon.
Director General and the CEO
This
both
is
resigned.
within one of our great allies. You know, this is supposedly our great ally, BBC. The government has a chunk of that one, I guess, but that's a pretty sad event. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical, and they actually changed it. What they did was rather incredible. They're showing me the results later on, the results of what they did, how they butchered it up. But it was very dishonest, and the head man quit, and a lot of the other people.
Meanwhile, British Culture Minister Lisa Nandy has said that a review into the BBC will start before the end of this year. Nandy has also stated that the government will ensure that BBC remains independent and accountable for the public it serves. Let's listen in.
We will imminently begin the Charter Review, which will set the terms of the BBC for the next decade, and through it we will collectively write the next chapter of the BBC's story. Together we will ensure the BBC is sustainably funded, commands the public's trust, and continues to drive growth, good jobs, skills and creativity across every region and nation of the UK. In an era in which trust is fraying and truth is contested across our nation, it will ensure the BBC remains fiercely independent and is genuinely accountable to the public it serves. We'll publish a green paper and launch a public consultation shortly, and I will set out more detail to the House in the coming weeks.
Now we move on to Middle East. Turkey's defense ministry has stated that 20 soldiers were killed in the crash of a military aircraft in Georgia, as inspectors continued to search for clues on what caused the NATO members' cargo plane to go down. The C-130 plane had taken off from Azerbaijan for Turkey and crashed in Georgia. Turkey has not yet provided any reason for the incident, which is the country's deadliest military accident since 2020. Meanwhile, Turkey has also stated that Turkish and Georgian authorities have begun inspections at the crash site and the Signaku municipality of Georgia's Kakheti district. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.